All right, now we're looking at question number 2. Hopefully you've read it already. We are looking at blue M&Ms, which we know is a categorical variable. So we should be dealing with proportions, and we are asked, is this significant evidence? So we know that that would require the use of a hypothesis test and a test dealing with proportions. So if we go to Grandma's Best Recipes, we are going to be using, we have one sample proportions doing a hypothesis test, so we will be using this formula right here in that test. Now if you remember in our hypothesis test, step 1 is to state the hypothesis. And I'll start with the alternative. The alternative, we are asked in the last sentence whether or not the equipment is producing the correct proportion of blue M&Ms. So we're asked, is the actual proportion not equal to what they're supposed to be, which is 20%? And then the null would then be that the proportion is equal to 20%. So then the second step is to go ahead, we're going to need to use the formula z is equal to p hat minus p0 all over square root of p0 times 1 minus p0 all over the sample size. So in order to plug that in, what I want to do is just write down the values we've got. P hat now, that one's not given to us, but if you look, this is our sample proportion, we are told that in a sample of 325 M&Ms, 54 were blue. So we can figure out the percent that are blue by taking 54 all divided by 325, which works out to be 0.16615. And you may want to just keep all the significant figures in your calculation. All right, so then we go ahead and plug in for z. I plug in the p hat is 0.16615. This p0, just a reminder, that is the proportion from the null hypothesis, which was a 0.20, divided by the square root of 0.20 times 1 minus 0.20, all divided by 325. And when you enter that in your calculator, you should get, and you should try this on your own, you should get a negative 1.52. So then in step 3 of our hypothesis test, we want to look up the p-value here. And the p-value, if we go back up here to step 1, we saw it was a not equal, and that tells us that we are looking for a two-sided p. And if we come down here, that was a z value we calculated, so we're going to go to our table and look for not the negative 1.52, but just 1.52 in the z's, and use the two-sided p. So 1.52 down here, and the z's are in the bottom row. 1.52 is right in here. And go down to the two-sided p, so the p-value is between 0.20 and 0.10, which, if we average those, would work out to be 0.15. So based on this, we can now go ahead and perform step 4, which is to determine if this is significant evidence. 0.15 is smaller than the significance level of 0.05. Sorry, that is bigger. I should know which way those go. It's bigger than 0.05, so we say that is fairly likely to occur. And so we go ahead and say we do not have significant evidence that the alternative is true, and the alternative was that the proportion is not 20%. In other words, that there are not the correct proportion of blue M&Ms being produced. And there are different ways of expressing this. You could also say that we are keeping the null hypothesis, or we do not have significant evidence to reject the null hypothesis, and any of those would be correct.